Do we have to do this tonight?
Cole, is it now the time? Are we live?
We're live, and like it or not, we have to talk about the things that have just transpired for 100 Thieves.
It's fresh, Cole. It's an immediate reaction pod. The wounds are still raw.
Gushing.
Just usually we have some time to moderate ourselves, to fix what is broken in our hearts.
Take a long steamy bath. A few bath bombs in there.
Weep,
a nice little book to read, some candles lit.
Weep deeply as I sit in the cold snow outside.
I call my family.
I haven't had time to do any of that, Cole. It's just me and you and all our friends in chat. Hey, friends.
As long as we have each other.
We still got that. That's not changed. We're wearing black tonight, Cole. Coincidence?
No, it literally, when I went to choose which thing I would wear for this, I chose something black so that I could demonstrate symbolically via my apparel choices the state of mourning that I'm currently in,
which is the current the state that is current. Yeah. Cole, we've got some practice with this situation and the current emotions we're feeling.
That's right. We're pros at this, and I don't know how I feel about that, saying that out loud.
I was hoping to never be here again, to be frank.
I was hoping we'd always be here with our wonderful listeners. Hello, 100 Talkers.
Hey.
You have joined us for 100 Talk again. We are all here and ready to go. I'm Cole. That's Jordan. We're silver or below. And this is 100 Talk, where we talk about 100 Thieves, LCS on this show, and lots of feels right now.
I'm just glad we've got approximately 70 minutes to really get into this, because there's some things I got to get into with you, Cole.
You know, I definitely was hoping that we would have a lot of time to talk about how sad we are.
Your wish is my command.
I hear that the best thing you can do for depression is to wallow in it.
Yeah. Talk about it. It's talk therapy. That's a thing. That's a real thing. Cole, quick reminder. This is our podcasted show. So this will be put out. There's a podcast. You might be listening to the podcast right now, in fact. So I do want to just remind all our friends in chat, if we're not catching as much of your witty comments and hot takes in real time, it's because we're trying to keep it 100 for the podcast.
Yeah.
But we still love you.
How we do. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk quickly about Game 1, the Civilist War against Dignitas. Then we're probably going to talk, I would describe it as at length.
Yeah.
About this FlyQuest game that just happened.
Yep.
And then we'll do the normal thing after that. We'll touch on some general things. We'll update you on the results of Trust the Papa, the apparel campaign, mental health campaign. And then we'll do some listener takes. And then who knows, we may even have Sir Radley's lore lesson tonight because if things couldn't get any worse for me, there's always lore.
There's always Molo, Cole.
There's always Molo. Shout out Molo. Hashtag Molo. Hashtag NOLO. All right. I honestly think the Game 1 discussion is going to be fairly short. I think you can key in on just one or two things. Jordan, I'll let you I'll put the T-ball on the stand for you and just let you like whack it.
All right, Cole, is it on the stand?
It's on the stand here.
Oops, Soraka-Olaf. All right, moving on to game 2.
Game 2. Okay.
No, there's a little bit more, but it's not a lot more than that, Cole.
Yeah, that's true. Soraka being, I mean, if I was queuing it up myself, Soraka would be what I'd key in. Wow, that was hard.
Yeah.
I don't think honestly, so here's what we're seeing. You guys can check us on this. This is kind of how I'm seeing this evolve. It seems like we're seeing power picks show up in like EU, and we kind of think that they might be an issue, but then it's just like, well, we'll see. We haven't seen it in NA, and then it happens, right? And Soraka seems to be one of those where you heard the rumblings about how overtuned Soraka's ult is and her healing and all that. Soraka top, Soraka top, Soraka top. Well, we rolled the dice on Soraka top,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't say it went particularly well for us.
I'd say it went horrendously badly.
Yeah.
And there's this thing that happens in best of threes, right? Where sometimes a team will dare the other team to pick the hot pick. It used to be Sona Tom Kench, Sona Tarek, pick your flavor. What happens is if you accept the challenge and you play it, if you win, you've earned yourself a free ban for the rest of the series. I think that's going to happen to us for the rest of the split. We cannot play against Soraka again until they retune her, which I think they might be. She might be on the queue.
I was going to say, I think it's next patch actually.
But so hopefully sooner than later. But if we let this through again and somebody picks it and they beat us with it, we only have ourselves to blame. We were fortunate tonight in a game that was in no ways fortunate that the FlyQuest was forced to ban it first because they were blue side. And if we got, hey, fool me twice, right? They're not going to let us take Soraka. So we are now consigned to that role. We have to make sure that Soraka is either in our hands or not in the enemy's hands. Otherwise, I would expect a repeat of this. And probably we should be very careful even after the tune comes through, because I think lately what we've seen is the first pass is probably not enough to fully kill the champion as much as it maybe deserves to be killed from the meta. So
yeah. Well, clearly it was a problem for us, and we tried our best to play set into that matchup. And what we found was basically what is sort of becoming a pattern, which is a neutralized Ssumday. And I know that there have been in the distant past, a lot of games where he was not neutralized, but this is one of those where he was. And I don't know what we do if Ssumday is not popping off. At this point, just judging by who's on the Rift for us, I don't know who else takes over when Ssumday isn't having a good game. There's, it's like some of the strength of these traditional sports teams, like NBA teams, they have like you have your alpha guy and maybe you have your top two guys, and then there's like a sixth man who can come off the bench and like torch.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not going that way. Like if Ssumday is like the lone option we have for the most part, and man, it hasn't really worked a lot lately.
Yeah. I think the most recent example we can look at is the Aatrox game against Team Liquid, perhaps, Cole?
Where he just killed everyone.
And the game with the Quadra. So that was against Liquid.
Yeah, that's
that was, I think, the exception. And honestly, it's not because he was doing so well that he was able to pop off there. The whole team was doing well. We were winning that game. He was able to win it for us in a very decisive way. I think that I have no expectations that Ssumday is going to be a player who can drag us to victory. I don't think it will happen. It hasn't happened in the past. It didn't happen in 2019. It won't happen this year. It's just not going to happen. I think he is truly one of the better, I'd say, top 3 top laners in the league. It's just not enough. And I think that is in no small part due to the state of the game.
Yeah.
Objectives being more important than ever. Well, if we have time, we can talk about that a little bit more. But I think the very short version is if your team loses a player in advance of these key moments, you lose that moment.
Oh, wow. That is going to be like the theme of the podcast.
Yes. And
so can I put a bookmark, please?
Oh, please.
Let me use one of my many bookmarks.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's something that comes much later, but that's what Ssumday is running into. And I saw it in this game against Dig, and I saw it next game, but that's my thoughts on Ssumday for the Dig game. The Civilist War, Cole.
So there was a bit of a support discrepancy in the Civilist War as well. Stunt has had trouble getting things going. Stunt has come off looking like a very much, all in kind of support. I think you even had a note, right, about his performance on Nautilus versus another support in the LCS's Nautilus in Vulcan. Did you want to dive into that?
This is probably one of the more unfair comparisons to ever make in the history of this button. So I'll start by just saying I recognize that. But this is a champion that I was pretty excited about because in Vulcan's hands, we saw what is possible, right? You get stone plate, you walk in front of your team, you hook someone who doesn't necessarily want to be hooked, and you pop stone plate and you hit your AoE spells. And Vulcan was a nightmare, Cole.
Yeah.
Stunt was the opposite. Like there was one play we watched this one on VOD Squad live, and I said, Cole, I'm pretty sure what happened there is he hit the Q to travel less than max Q range, and then he stone plated moments before dying. It just wasn't well executed on any level.
Yeah, you're talking about in mid lane where he was trying to escape and he threw the hook out to hook terrain, and he went like a total of 6 inches.
And then he hit stone plate. It's like one of those where you flash as the turret shot is in air, and then the turret shot just travels an extra like 400 units and still kills you.
Yeah, it's like, oh, did you think? Oh,
yep. Like you could do that if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So that for me was a problem. Like I think that was a big problem. And
I was looking at his KDA from that game, and I will put it this way: it looks like my KD from Call of Duty. That's how bad it was.
The 0.0 KDAs.
he hit 0.17. You know.
All right.
But 0-6-1, not a great Nautilus game, no.
Yeah, and this is here. The longer we do this show, the more I find myself coming back to the same kind of like hedges. Playing support on a team that's not working, man, that's a tough role. You don't have the luxury of being a top laner on a team that's not working and ending the game 0-0-0. You are in it, you're engaging, and you're dying. But I do think that at this point I can say we need fewer deaths from Stunt. We need more reliable engages. There are things that are actually deficits at this point. It's not just his circumstances. It's not just he's been given a tough role.
Yeah,
I think it's something more than that.
Now, what did you think about Ryoma when it came to Dignitas? So Ryoma's everybody's got their eye on him, right?
Yep.
Because he's the new guy. He's coming from the minor region. He's I hate to say it this way because it's not really like what I think personally, but he's kind of an easy person to blame. Yeah. When the team doesn't do well, because mid lane is such an influential position. Against Dignitas specifically, he took Rise into Ornn and he went 2-4-3, and didn't really get an opportunity to do things that Rise should be doing, like split pushing and you know what are you taking away from Ryoma at this point?
I think Rise is one of those champions where in a game where your team is not working, it's very hard to have an influential game. And there were a couple instances I think that we caught. Like there was one where he missed a Q that would have triggered a crit into the 4 people chasing him who weren't low health to the point where it would have made any difference. So that one you kind of look at and you're like, oh, bummer. But it had absolutely zero impact on the game, right?
Yeah.
It looks bad. That's about the only thing. And he had a lot of targets to hit. He kind of, he wide right. So my thought in general is this. I think he's doing, so he was against Froggen, right? Who a lot of people are saying is in that top mid laner conversation. Like he is, as you've listened to some of the podcasts, people are talking about him as being one of those top tier mid laners. He held his own in lane. He CS'd at a competitive rate. He didn't fall behind. He's not losing us the game in the lane. And if you're playing Rise in this game, that's the only way you can really mess this up for us. He didn't have the opportunity to make an impact in this game, but really no one did. And we needed him in places at all times. He couldn't just sit and split. That being said, I think he could have done more with Realm Warp. I think he could have used that a little bit more proactively to try to generate pressure in other places. And I just didn't really see him. I don't know that I think he used it once. And honestly, it was kind of like the Nautilus Q where you're like, that's where you decided to Realm Warp. It was like,
he had like a short
Yeah.
Realm Warp that was
So-
coming to a questionable place.
I'm not giving him a pass, but I'm going to say in this specific game, I'm not chalking it up to him. As we talked about, there's a lot of other things going on, and I think he's doing the best he can in some of these situations where the way the team is drafting for you, those conditions are not ever coming to bear. He doesn't have the opportunity to contribute in the way that we would expect to see someone contribute who's on that champion. That's my perspective.
Now, I will talk about this in more detail during the discussion of tonight's game, because clearly he was not able to achieve his objective as a Zoe in this past game. But just pushing this game to the side for a minute, because there's also an interesting pattern that I saw with Ryoma, and specifically with his CS and laning, right? And again, this tonight's game aside. Tonight's game actually breaks this rule, not 100%, but if you go back and you look at all the games from this split up until now, the games. So we had 3 wins and 4 losses until tonight, right?
Yep.
In the 3 wins, he had the worst CS deficit in all of them, right? So the win against Golden Guardians, he was -60. The win against CLG, he was -77. The win against Team Liquid, he was -35.
Is this end of game stats?
Yeah, this is end of game.
Yeah.
And then against Evil Geniuses, which was a loss, he was -31, but the others are like -3, -14 against Immortals. Against Dignitas, he was +45.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's almost like, again, aside from tonight, because I think he finished like 75 back, but for the most part, it has seemed the more laning resources he's gotten, the worse we've done, and not, the other way around, which I think people think of mid laners in this way where, feed them, give them everything they need and watch them pop off. He just might not be that kind of player because he likes to roam.
Yeah. And, on a previous episode, you'd run some stats for him. I think the more telling stats for Ryoma are CSD at 10, 15. And I think specifically, and I haven't watched the VOD to confirm this suspicion, I think if you look at the Rise game, so the one you said he against Dig where he ends +45 or whatever it was, probably a lot of that is the time he spent in a side lane on his own, keeping the wave either trying to push or balanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's able to and is expected to, and his job is to just kind of sit in the lane and keep it going, push. It turned into nothing, for us. So it didn't do much. And that's why I think, especially if you're looking at end of game numbers, you're going to be running into, I would expect for him to fall further behind, as we are kind of all hands on deck to try to salvage something from these team fights, right? Like, let's bring everybody in. And this, we see this Ssumday as well. When we pick Ssumday on a split pushing champ, he just eventually can't do it because we need every damage we can get in a team fight. And he is now spending his time probing, looking for an in, trying to find some access to the back line, compared to his lane opponent, who's probably just free farming, either in a lane or catching a wave, hitting the jungle, like whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
So I think those are going to be a bit misleading for Ryoma, especially as we go.
That's fair. I would love to see someone who's smarter than us look into this and see what the pattern is, but
there are definitely games, to your point, where he is down at 15. That's without a question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I am not claiming that he's a good laner.
Oh, I know. I know you're not. And you've
even
argued
tonight,
the opposite.
I think, in fact, I've said every week, watch him at the very beginning game. He always misses CS that he should easily get. It happened tonight. I cannot explain. In the very first wave, he missed, I think it was a caster.
Yeah.
And when I watched it, there's no explanation for why he missed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's always stuff
one where
like
he was
that.
anticipating a Syndra Q, and he tried to hit it early, and then he backed off to dodge a Q.
Yeah.
But
it just was not great.
But I do think that these 2 games, and again, this is without like the super in depth. I just watched this game right before we went live. I think in these games he was doing a pretty good job of keeping it even, especially during that laning phase, right before we kind of get into the everything comes unwound and we've lost every objective that we possibly can phase of the game.
Yeah. Hey, so look, honestly, our conversation is just pulling us straight into tonight's game.
Let's go there.
Is it, well, I was gonna say I think you may have had another thing or two that you wanted to do for Dignitas. If you want to do that, let's do that now before we just go full blown into tonight.
That's a good point. The last thing we've not talked about at all is Meteos, right? And he played Lee Sin. That is such a skill champion. You have to hit your Qs. His entire kit is based on hitting your Qs. It's the jump in, it's the ability to jump in and then hop out with a ward that you don't have to use to pursue. I kind of feel like, so you think about this, right? These are the kinds of moments that I'm seeing come up more and more often. You have this play in the top lane, Ssumday, Meteos, both pursuing, both investing resources and trying to get this kill on Soraka. You all know the play I'm talking about. He misses the Q. He's standing right next to Soraka. He misses the Q. He then has to commit. I think he has to commit a flash.
I think he flashed. Yeah, if I remember right.
So you get the kill on Soraka, but you know what? The opportunity for a regank is gone, right? Because if you show up, you have a more limited toolbox available to actually make your time worth it. So if you're talking about a lane where you know that the player, their objective is to scale and build to the late game, and you can't punish early. And by the way, if you lose your ability to regank on that, you get one kill and then you show up and you still have flash, there's your threat. She has to play so much more safely.
Right. So, it alters the play style. Yeah, in the lane.
100%. It feels like one of those things. It's too easy, I think, to just say like, he got the kill though, but at what cost? And I'm not going to say that missed Q cost us the game, but I think it changed the dynamic in the top lane for sure, right? It made it that much safer for Soraka to just do her job, farm up to late, and then we all saw what happened.
Yeah. Well, gosh, there's so much to unpack with Meteos right now, and we will definitely spend a lot of time doing so. Just to try and maintain this will be very free-flowing conversation tonight, I think, because just there's like so much on the mind, but to try and structure it a little bit as we move into this FlyQuest game. Let's start at the beginning, because I want to talk about something where I saw, especially in our Discord, people were popping off about the draft. And I know that there's been this thing about Ziggs drafts and whatever. Now, us, first of all, we don't have the like deep draft knowledge to be able to say, that was like the right move, or you would just pick this if they picked that. Like, we cannot give you what you need if you're looking for like the expert analysis of the draft. What we can tell you though is a few things. One, for sure, these drafts are a collaborative process between everybody. Okay. It's not like Ziggs doesn't go up there and say, pick this or you're fired. Yeah, like that's not how it works, right? So there's that. Second of all, I actually felt in this draft, I'm not sure what else we could really do there. Like if you look how it shook off, especially after the first round of pick bans, right? It was like FlyQuest banned Soraka, which, obviously that would have been our huge problem child that we didn't want played. Yeah. The other banned Senna and Set.
Yep.
And then our bans, we banned Rumble, who has been doing a lot of damage in other leagues. Mm-hmm. Yuumi, who again is like I was mentioning, there's like one of these like maybe an LEC originating pick that starts making its way into other things, and it has been very bad for some people.
Yeah, won a couple games this weekend for sure.
Right, and then Riven.
Yep.
Who you cannot let Viper play Riven even if you have counterpick.
Right.
He's like, even if you have counterpick 75-80% of the time, he's still going to go off on you if the game gets long enough. Right. Yeah. So it's like we made this first round and it's like, well, I don't really know what you're looking for beyond that. Right. Cause like, okay, FlyQuest picks Aphelios. All right. Maybe ban Aphelios instead of Rumble since they have first pick. Yeah. That's just going to get them another power pick in that slot, but whatever. That is what it is. I can get if people are upset about the Ornn pick, like us leaving Ornn on the table. I specifically can understand that because as you guys have heard me say even before games, I want Ssumday on Ornn. Like Ornn is a very powerful pick, and we've seen Ssumday just be effective on more tanky top laners, right? And people don't like to hear that. They like to say, well, Ssumday can, perform all these insane mechanical outplays, so put him on champions where he can do that. Well, he happens to he has a higher success rate in our team not doing that, and instead being on a champion like Ornn. So I can get maybe being a little upset at Ornn. But we got the Rakan Xayah duo. Stunt, I think Rakan has been the champ that Stunt has looked the most confident on and the most, the cleanest on.
The Thresh
paired that with Xayah. Cody-san
yeah.
has a good Xayah,
Yeah. Yep.
We got Ssumday on Aatrox, which a lot of people call for. Like I said, it's not my choice, but a lot of people are like, oh, I see what happens when he's on Aatrox because he, destroyed Team Liquid, even though, what was it, a week before he was 0-5-0 or whatever on Aatrox.
Well, they got the counter picks, United,
Yeah. So it's just like there's so, like, draft can go so many ways, and it's you just have to resist the urge to be like, oh, that obviously was a bad draft when something works, because what else is going to work in that spot? It's like, there's no, first of all, you don't know how scrims went. You don't know what was problematic for us during the week.
Yeah.
You don't know what other picks would be answered if we did things a different way. So it's just, again, I get it. I know, like the Soraka thing for me is like, that's pretty hard to excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, the Soraka pick for Dignitas. It's like, okay, cool. That was a major problem. But at least we learned from it in this draft,
Yeah. And for me, it's the Soraka run back that is actually inexcusable. I think you're making a really good point, which is that's kind of the way draft works. There's always something that could hurt you. There's always something.
Right.
The thing you cannot do is let the thing will hurt you, right? You cannot give them, I mean, some people choose to, Riven. But that's such a known risk that I think it is a really arrogant play to make, to give him a champion that you have seen win games single-handedly, right? That champion is good enough in Viper's hands to win a game. So if you're going to give it to him, here's how that plays out. You give it to him and he beats you with it, and then guess what? You threw the game in draft. So there will be champions in the pool more than you can ban out. That's by design, by the way. They want there to be strong champions available to play. That's kind of how they do this. So you have to make your best guess at what the least dangerous is. And I think for the first round, we got a lot. We got an Aatrox that we'd seen do really well. We got the Xayah Rakan, which we know is a comfort pick for our bot lane. So I'm not mad about that first.
The other thing is, like, remember that we also have had to take steps to protect Ryoma in the draft, right? So we're trying to save counter pick for him. So he's going to be our last pick, and like I saw a few people complaining about the Sejuani pick. It's like, well, you can't, like, the way it shook out, like we locked in Rakan and Xayah, which again, on our bot lane, that has the power to be really something. Like, Cody-san has a good Xayah, and as I mentioned, Stunt has looked the best comparatively on Rakan. So I'm not mad at that. And if you do that first, well, if you're saving your counter pick for Ryoma, then you had to, in this situation, take Sejuani and let them pick Trundle and then answer. Like, you don't have a choice there.
I don't love to do this. I don't love to second guess picks. This is one that does feel to me like you could have picked Trundle. You knew that Ornn was in this game, and you know that he is one of the premier tanks in the whole game, right? Incredibly tanky champion. I mean, Trundle is a tank killer, right? And Ornn became such an unstoppable force. I would have loved to have had Trundle. So, and by the way, this is another reason I don't love to second guess drafts, is because we know how the Sejuani pick worked out.
Yeah.
But in like using only the knowledge you have in draft, Trundle is a viable pick, I would argue, for us too, because at that point they had drafted one tank. It was a pretty,
yeah. Well, look, since we're talking about Sejuani, let's just dive into Meteos.
Yeah.
So one thing you said was that we know how the Sejuani pick worked out, right? And you can't look at this game and be like, well, Sejuani was objectively a bad pick because Sejuani was barely played in this game. Like I had, like, we have talked about, we need more out of Meteos. Meteos needs to return to form. If we're going to be, you know, competitive this split, we need him. We need him to gank. There are so many things that were wrong with that performance tonight that I don't know if you learned anything about Sejuani tonight for our team. Yeah. I really don't. And I honestly, like, I'm looking at my notes and it's kind of hard to like see even where to start. If you want to talk ganks, Santorin, I ganked 3 times in the first 8 minutes. Yeah. 3 times.
And
one was kind of bad.
Yeah.
Well, no, because the mid lane gank he did was actually like pretty bad. Right? Like right off the bat, I think it was his first one. It was like kind of lazy, and I think the casters were like, "Oh, Power Evil didn't set that up well."
Yeah,
pillar,
exactly.
and even if the pillar hit, it wasn't like really in the right spot. I don't know.
He pillared second. He should have pillared first. Yeah,
but he sure did visit bot lane a couple times, and it made it pay off.
And that's where he got something every time he went.
Right, and Meteos was not doing that at all. And there was a play later on where, and this was before the tower dive. We saw when they tried to tower dive Viper, he kind of went up for the top lane gank and he sat in that bush. And if you look at that back, I can't see a world where that ever could have turned into a gank. Like, I don't like the position the wave was in, the health bars on the minions. Like, there's no chance that Viper would just mysteriously walk forward into position where that would be a good gank.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't even want to count it as a gank, to be honest.
Yeah.
And if you don't count that as a gank, then it's really 0 ganks.
Yeah.
But right after that is when the tower dive happened, where I'm not sure why they were very confident in getting that kill. It just seemed like a total underestimation of Viper. Under this turret, and because of that, you died.
So
Meteos died, gave a kill over to the Ornn, who was getting smashed in lane up to that point.
Was getting destroyed. I have so many things I want to say about this, and I will try to keep track of them all. The first thing is this: top tier junglers punish the enemy jungler when they so if you watch Counter-Strike Go, they talk about having information, right? So you have somebody who watches a lane and they see nobody. That's incredibly valuable because they can tell the rest of the team the enemy's not here, right? That means they're somewhere else on the map. When you see, so the first gank we talked about, right? Santorin shows up, wastes some time, throws the pillar out, kind of like, oh, I guess that didn't work, and walks away. You have to punish that. That has to be punished. And when you watch the best teams in the world, it's always punished. They recognize where the jungler is. They recognize that jungler now has at least an experience deficit. He might be a full camp behind you, right? You might have another ability than him. Like, you may have your full kit unlocked and he doesn't. Or you can find some other way to punish this. It's just not happening. And when he shows up in bot lane, that's more information. You have to keep track of this stuff. And part of me feels silly. Of course, they're keeping track of it, right? I would expect so. But what happened, Cole, is Santorin hit all these ganks. He was ganking like there's no tomorrow. He had completely forgotten about his camps. He was just showing up in lane. He was grabbing a flash there. He's ripping off a kill there. He got the first blood. At one point, Santorin and Meteos were still dead even on CS.
In camps.
How does that happen?
I saw that. Yeah.
How can that possibly be the case? What am I missing where you know where he is? He's showing on map. He's spending a good amount of time fighting your team. He's collecting no CS from your champions, your fellow champions, and he's still at pace or ahead of you on CS. There's no punish. If you're not ganking, you have to be power farm. You have to be counter jungling. You have to be taking things from the enemy jungler that will allow you to punish him because he's spending time trying to punish your allies. I just didn't see it happen at all. And what we then got was one of the poorer executed dives I've seen in a long time. There was a dash in that hit the tower. I don't even know if you can hit the tower with Sejuani dash. It fell short. There's supposed to be a knock-up on the end. It didn't happen. There's no knock-up. You know, Viper gets to go right into his whole combo. And then what you get is he kills you. And now I've written this down, Cole, at different points. Ssumday's up 30 CS, 40 CS, 75 CS. He's continuing to build this CS lead. And you know who has a bounty on him? Viper. Viper has a bounty on him with 2 kills and like a 75 CS deficit. How it's and this is why Ssumday cannot win these games for us, because he can do everything he can do in lane. He can get a 75 CS advantage, but it's not enough when you're playing against Ornn and he's been, you know, he got a free kill, and it tilts me. And I'm not playing the game. It's no surprise to me, Cole, that Meteos opted out of the Bud Light League Lounge.
Yeah,
of course. It's bad news, man. It's bad news.
It's rough. Now, can we talk about another facet of Meteos right now that's not going well for us? This could be an entire pod at this point, which is very sad, man, because I want him to be good and I want us to be good, but gosh, man. All right. So I was looking through like the notes I took on this game. Now I realize I may have misspoken, because I do have mention of perhaps a failed mid lane gank that he did kind of early on. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. This is what my note says. Meteos gets hooked after failed gank for no reason. Yeah. Why did he stay? He barely survives, but that gives them over Infernal Drake. Okay, yeah. So first Drake goes over because Meteos, for whatever reason, I don't know why he thought Ignar wouldn't be there 1 second later, because he was just there 1 second previous. Mm-hmm. And he wandered into that like bush and mid river. Yeah. And got hooked.
The same exact spot that Stunt made a blind hook, by the way.
Yeah, and sent home, right? So he's done, and that's a Drake, okay? Then they bullied us off of Rift Herald, which we had started up. I actually thought that play was going to work. I thought we were going to be able to get Rift Herald, but
we lined up for the Ornn Horn.
Yeah,
and then gave him another kill.
And Meteos got pushed away there. And
I think he actually
survived.
If I'm remembering, he got subjugated by Trundle, which
did he? Okay, yeah. Well,
basically knocked him completely out of any fight. Right? If Trundle had his ult up, Sejuani could not participate in that fight because he had 0 armor resistance, or negative, perhaps.
Sure, and so they get a kill on Stunt, and they get Shelly, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and they took a lot from that, by the way. Ssumday like left lane. They got charge and plates on mid lane. They got plates bot lane while that was happening. Then shortly thereafter, like basically as soon as Ocean Drake was up, Meteos got caught out in the river, seemingly for no reason again. Like I would have to watch the replay more carefully to see how he got into this position, but he was out of position.
This may have been. Was this the one where he went for the ult in their jungle and missed it?
No.
Okay, so different ones.
We're not there yet.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And so he gets caught out. I don't remember if he died or if he just had to leave. Yeah. But it was it doesn't matter. He's off the map, you know. The results of this play is he's off the map, and gave over Ocean Drakes. That's 2 Drakes over to them. Mm-hmm. Then we had the 1v2 dive, which put us down 3K at 15 minutes.
Yep.
They got second Herald off the back of that as well. So perfect. 0-4 for neutral objectives. Then what you're talking about. Yeah. He tried to ult Santorin in Santorin's jungle from like a mile away. It was from so far away. And when I watch it back, it doesn't feel like he had a prayer to like land this, right? And it missed. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. That big cooldown is gone. Let's move on in. He immediately got hooked and caught. And I think he made it away again. I think he made it away and survived with like no health left. Yeah. But third Drake to them.
Trying to leave the scene of the crime. He gets hooked and jumped on and beat up, and then like just barely gets out, I think is how that
and then after that we're in this weird position where like I don't know. Oh, well, I'll come back and talk about that later.
Yeah.
But so at that point, my own notes are kind of unraveling because I'm like, oh gosh,
You're
this is
descending
just
into
going
madness.
bad.
Yeah.
So I've got some things, and then out of nowhere, I have, oh look, Meteos gets caught again right ahead of a Drake fight, and he dies, and it's a free Dragon Soul. So literally every single Drake that they got was off of a Meteos mistake. Literally every single one.
Yeah.
So that was 4 free Drakes, 2 Heralds, like 0-6 on the neutrals.
Yeah. Cool. We ended the game with 1 kill, 1 turret, no Drakes. Like, what a sad, sad game.
Yeah.
And it's you pick a champ like Sejuani. This is not the first time we've talked about needing to hit those ults, Cole. If you remember the chat, please recall. Talked about this with Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And he had that game where he missed a few of them, and then he started to play it more and started to hit him and started to get really good at it. It makes such a huge difference, right? Just like that Lee Sin Q. If you're not hitting him though, you're basically, and especially if you get subjugated as soon as the fight starts, you're not a tank. You have no role in the game. You do nothing.
Yeah. So actually, you allow me to indulge here, since we're talking about Miss Sejuani ults. All right, I've got receipts on one.
Yeah.
I don't think this one matters, okay? But I think it's just symbolic. So sorry to the audio listeners. I actually I have screenshots for this that I'm going to show this stream because I couldn't believe it when I saw it. So this is at that end fight team fight in the Nexus.
It is black screen for us, Cole.
Yeah, I know. I haven't started it yet.
Just make sure.
So this is, the last team fight on the Nexus, basically last stand fight. It's probably not going to make a difference anyway, but just let me indulge. So this is the team. This is where Meteos is as the ult is thrown. Okay.
Yep,
so you can see right here. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but right underneath the Nexus in between Meteos and the turret, you can see his ult coming out. Right.
Yep.
Now, I will mention that nobody here on FlyQuest is in the middle of a dodge or anything, or like a dash or
one
anything.
person is currently airborne.
Right.
Has been knocked up.
On the bot side of this fight, right?
Okay,
so this is where the ult goes. All right. You see this ring here? That maybe the outer ring kind of touched Viper a little bit. That's where he threw that ult.
He might have got a 4% or like a 2% slow.
Yeah, here's where they were when it came out. Here's where he threw it.
Oh.
That is really bad. And someone, if you've got 300 IQ and you could explain to me what he was thinking, if he thought someone was going to Wild Turtle is going to flash in that direction for some reason or whatever. Honestly, if I'm missing something, let me know, man. Please let me know. But this was a very, very, very bad miss ult. And that's just what we got from Meteos tonight.
Yeah.
It's that is the kind of performance. And so it's you have to ask yourself, is it contracts time? And do you know why that's such a crazy question to ask? And by the way, I don't think I'm throwing that out there. I don't think it is yet. Okay, so let me be
so
absolutely
you'll bait chat
clear.
And you'll back off it.
I'll bait him. I'll bait him. But look, for real, I'm not suggesting that it's time to bench Meteos. In fact, I specifically think we should keep this going for a little bit just to see what it develops. Because who cares? Spring, who cares? But Contracts is there, and do you know why this especially sucks? Do you remember the last time we had a backup jungler in a position behind Meteos when, Meteos, how he felt about that and what ended up happening and how the entire 100 Thieves 2018 unraveled?
And then we had 2019, which many would say was not the re-raveling of the team. I remember that very well, in fact. And as has been reported, right, it was the mere suggestion that Anda get some time that kind of started to lead to some internal strife. I don't know what you do, Cole. I don't know what you do.
I feel like you have to be extremely careful about that, about contracts, right?
Yeah.
In this situation because of the history. And that sucks, because that means if you get to a point where you absolutely feel a change is necessary, like, you know, you have to be so sure about it. And you can't do what, you know, perhaps you do in like a regular sports situation, light a fire under somebody by, you know, benching them or whatever. You can't really do that here because the stakes are different. So, man, what a tough position to be in. But absolutely positive that Meteos' performance has to improve if this team is going to build, because even if you talk about all the other things, all the other threads of this that we've talked about, how like unraveling for the team, they connect to the jungle, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like this could be one of those root things, but I don't want to like blow everything up after 4 weeks of spring where we have like an entirely new program under us. I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
But man,
the thing
what
that,
a tough position it is. That's all I'm saying, is what a tough position this has ended up to be, that we've gotten ourselves into.
Yeah. This is kind of nightmare scenario territory.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, it could be worse. It couldn't be a lot worse, Cole.
Yeah.
These are the things that we needed to go really well, right? Like, just step back a little bit. Remember what we were talking about? It was Ryoma. It was Stunt. And I think we haven't talked about Stunt in this game yet. People are going to look at Ryoma and they're going to say, yeah, okay, he's doing fine. Fine's not good enough. In this game, in this current team, Fine is great. Fine is fantastic. We should embrace Fine, get him a spa day, let him know how much you appreciate him. You need this guy for the future of your organization, because if nothing else, he's not a liability. I maintain that. And at this point, that's a big deal. When you have things not working in different places, there are 5 people who play in your League of Legends team. If you have multiple problems, you're getting close to the majority. You know, you're one player away from more players not working than working. And I think right now you've got serious questions. I've got serious questions about Meteos. I have serious questions about Stunt. It's unclear to me, Cole, if these two can be a viable part of a team who's going to compete for even a playoff spot. At the way they're currently playing, they've got to do a lot to bring it back. And if you're thinking about maybe we need to relook at Ryoma, I think you've been distracted by the shiny bubble in the room, and that's the last place you should be looking right now. He's stuck even with PoE tonight. Another person who, by the way, I've been hearing tossed around as one of these resurgent mid laners who's top tier. So Ryoma's fine. He's not where we need to be focusing our attention, our energy right now. I'm sticking to that one. And did he have a good Zoe game? Hard to say, because he's trying to poke down people who have 600 extra shield, and you know you can't do it. You could land sleeps all day, and then you could land the paddle star after it, and then Ssumday could drop 2 Qs on them, and they'd still have at least half health. It's insane. You can't win that game. Ryoma and Ssumday might well have not even played. It's just they had no chance.
Yeah, and I know chat is split on reaction to you saying Ryoma is fine, and I think here's another way of looking at it that may clear it up. And by the way, someone just mentioned he's missing all his skill shots. Well, his last Zoe game, he hit like all of them.
Yeah,
all of them. Like he may have missed one.
Yeah,
it's basically it. But yes, tonight wasn't so great. Sure, but so maybe another way of wording what you're saying, and maybe a softer take, is that even if you disagree that whether or not he's like fine, I think it's pretty hard to dispute that he's not the top priority problem right now.
Right.
To me, it's we got to fix Meteos or fix jungle. We got to fix Stunt, and then we can look elsewhere. Yeah. And to me, it's important to do those things one at a time, right? Especially when we have the time to do so, right? Remember, Trust the Papa is all about a rebuilding process that has a long-term vision, right? So we're specifically taking time to figure these things out. And it's a painful process. It's a process that needs a lot of patience. But hey, if we're going to take the time, then let's do this thing right. And instead of like looking at the game of Jenga and like taking out like the one or taking out like a whole section, just like remove one piece or whatever, you know, and then see how much it wobbles from there.
Right.
That's what I would do, is address these things kind of one at a time.
Yeah.
But so, and again, just to clarify, I don't think it's time to like pull the plug on Meteos. I don't think we're there.
We just gotta get it figured out. It needs
to be, something is definitely wrong. So some steps need to be taken, you know, to address that. And I don't have answers, because it doesn't look, when I look at junglers, it doesn't look like he's playing that position that other junglers are playing. It just doesn't look like it. Like, especially with the ganks, I don't know what's going on.
How much different do these games look if Meteos can reliably show up and get a kill when he ganks? It changes the entire complexion of these games. I know it sounds very simple, but like in this game, you know, if he either wouldn't have made that Ornn gank or made it in a way that was actually effective, maybe Ssumday is too big a problem for them to deal with, right? Like that can have a material impact on the game. It can change the complexion of the entire game. So the absence of that, and in many cases the opposite of that, right? Him showing up and actually hurting our chances is such a huge problem. We have to address that. Yeah. And one last thing, if I can just say on Ryoma, he did a really good job in lane today. Even when they were throwing 2 or 3 people at him, he didn't die. I can't remember the first time he died, but I don't think he died to a gank. And they threw a lot at him. And he actually even saved Meteos once, right? As Zoe.
Yeah, he did. He actively saved Meteos from dying.
He hit a key bubble. He had a key skill shot, which saved Meteos when he had been caught out in one of the 3 or 4 different times that we talked about him getting caught out. So you're not going to convince me that Ryoma is your problem. Like, he's doing more than I think you could expect somebody to do in his situation, which is he's staying even in lane. He's not dying. He's not giving anything up. He's wasting their time, and he's saving the people who are supposed to be there to help him out. Like, he's doing a lot, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, these things aren't in a vacuum either. So I think, like, look, if you want to still say, you know, that you think Ryoma is a problem or whatever, it's like, at least you can admit that we're not sure, right? We're not sure about like where he stands yet. We don't know enough. But I think we all can agree that we are sure that something needs to change in the jungle, right?
Like,
is that fair?
The way that our jungle is contributing in these games has to change, 100%.
Right.
Whether that means a different person's playing jungle, or just we're using Meteos in a different way, or we get through whatever mental block he has right now. Like, that's just got to change. And I think if that changes, our fortunes start to change as well.
You want the softest take of all?
Please.
Maybe it's just not our meta.
There you go, Cole.
It's just not our meta, guys. Let's just wait until the meta shifts.
Man, there's some... I would love to talk about the meta too if we have time, but I'm not sure we'll have time.
Oh gosh, I have to say this out loud because I just saw. So Jordan and I work off of a rundown document in Google Docs, so we both can see it and like type on it at the same time or whatever. And when we did the rundown for this, I put in a line for Cole's major problem, and he put in a line for Jordan's major problem. And when we were about to start this, I typed right next to Cole's major problem, "This is Meteos." And then I just looked back to see that Jordan had typed the exact same thing next to it.
Just wanted you to know we're on the same page on that one, Cole.
Oh man. Okay, let's talk about, can we talk just a little more on Ssumday really quick?
Yeah, should we talk more about Stunt? We didn't really talk about Stunt, but
well, we will.
Okay.
Let me do a quick thing on Ssumday, because I think we've alluded to most of what the point is with him. But I just wanted to point out, I'm saying this so that there is an entry on the record on the pages of 100T fandom. There's a reference point where we can look back when we're not sure about these things in like 4 weeks, what it was. All right. Ssumday was on Aatrox today. Mm-hmm. He finished 70 CS ahead of his lane opponent.
Yes.
And was almost entirely ineffective. It almost did not matter that he was playing. Mm-mm. Okay?
Yep.
What do we need to do with this guy? He's so good. He's so good. How can we unlock this guy? Maybe ganks. I don't know. Maybe ganks. Maybe different champions. I like I've said on record so many times. I'd love to see him on Ornn or Gangplank or whatever. But gosh, how frustrating is this to have another game where the lead doesn't result in anything? Go ahead.
Can I give you my take on this?
Yeah.
Here's what I think happens. Ssumday, I'll do a little like narrative on this. Ssumday in lane, crushing, destroying CS, right? Absolutely demolishing who in large parts is a fairly functional top lane opponent, Viper. Getting up on CS, getting strong, feeling strong, hitting some good trades, right? He got that solid 3Q trade, got him down to less than half health.
I'm feeling this take, man. I'm feeling it. I'm right there with you emotionally.
You gotta, right?
All my senses are turned on.
Some days feel good. He's getting a little tingly. He's like, yeah, I got this. This is my game. I got this. I'm gonna smash this dude. I'm gonna smash him. Meteos shows up, says, let's get this guy in a turret. And he's like, bro, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And he's like, trust me. I got this. Let's do it. Does it? Dies. Somebody's like, all right. That's not what I needed, but okay, sure. Goes back to lane, keeps building the CS lead. Building. Here. Okay, you know what time it is? He's been up there building the CS lead. He's probably up to like 30, 40 CS lead right now. Drake start coming up. And you know what happens? He said, you're a player on your team's been killed. He's like, oh boy, that's bad news. It's Meteos. Oh, we have no ability to steal. We're going to lose to Drake. We lost to Drake. Fast forward, Cole. The entire game passes. By the time we get to fight for none of the Drakes, by the time Ssumday shows up, feeling swole, power spiking, the game's over. It is over. You cannot Aatrox your way through a Mountain Soul team that has tanks and has tank killers. If you're Aatrox, you just don't have enough. There's not enough damage in your kit in the world. There's no scenario where you're Ssumday and you're far enough ahead to offset the difference a Mountain Soul makes in these fights. It just doesn't happen. It never happens. There's nothing Ssumday can do about that. That's my take.
Poor Ssumday.
Poor Ssumday.
It's like if one other thing goes right in the first 15 minutes, he'll be fine and he'll be able to take over. But the problem is he needs that one thing to go right.
He needs something to go. We lose all the Rifts. We lose all the Drakes. It's not the first time this has happened. You can't do it if you're Ssumday. I'm sorry. I love you, and I would love to see you do it, but you're not going to be able to. It's not going to happen.
Yep. All right. Well, like I said, I just wanted an entry in the halls of 100T fandom that we talked about Ssumday and how we love him and want him to be able to crush, but he's not in a position to do so. And it feels very bad. Okay. But you brought up Stunt. So let's talk about Stunt. Actually, this was an interesting game for Stunt, in my opinion. Again, I thought Rakan, he has looked great on Rakan in some games. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, in this game, I almost feel like he changed his play style in the middle of the game. And honestly, I'm wondering, like, that to me seems like an improvement. So here's what I mean. He's an all-in guy, mm-hmm. and he has some pretty flashy mechanics and things that he likes to try and pull off, right? Even if they don't always work, he likes to give them a go, and he likes to all in and kill people because he knows that if he gets that going, then it's basically a one lane and probably a one game with Cody Sun. It didn't go so well in the early game here, and he had, I think, two deaths that were not great early on. One of them was defending the Rift Herald take, which was probably just a bad call. I don't know if he should have backed off or not. I think he was trying to keep Meteos safe. But so I'm willing to call this a 2.5 death game instead of a 3 death game for him.
Yeah.
But he did die twice early. Mm-hmm. And because of that, things got out of control.
Yep. Santorin picked one up.
Right.
I can't remember who got the other one.
And am I wrong to say it felt like he backed off during this game?
Yeah, there
what do you remember from the second half of the game with Stunt?
Not a lot. There were, I think there's maybe one quickness that I saw thrown down. Didn't really make much difference. I think it was after they'd already had Mountain Soul, so it didn't make a lot of difference. Yeah, he backed off. He backed off.
Yeah.
Appropriately? Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right? Because like you can't just keep giving over those kills.
No.
And no, it's not a good thing to always try and do something, right? Like there are times when the percentages of you pulling it off is just not worth taking, especially at a juncture where it's like successfully doing something crazy isn't going to win you the game. Right. So you have to be measured about the
Right.
way that you take those, right?
Give yourself a chance to actually win it when you can.
When the time comes, right? And if you've given over too many deaths, then you're not even in the position to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but it also seems like the rest of the team doesn't necessarily want to fight all the time the way he does. And maybe that's on brand for Cody. And maybe that's why in the heist they were talking about them having some disagreements about play style, because I don't know, like, and I don't have the stats and information in front of me to back this up. So again, for like the 10th time this podcast, tell me if I'm off base here. When I think about the way Cody's son plays, I'm thinking that he's playing fairly conservative early, waiting to pop off at the end.
Hyper carry, Cody. That's
we don't see him do much early game stuff in general.
Yeah.
That's my perception of him. So Stunt seems to want to play the exact opposite way. Like, let's do this now and snowball this.
Right.
And man, is that gonna work? Is that gonna change? Like what's happening there?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's part of the reason that Cody and Afro worked so well together. I think for me, the big thing with Stunt is, look, they talk about them not being on the same page in the heist and trying to work things out and all that. And I don't know how much I really put into that, because it seemed like a storyline they'd kind of put together for the heist, like.
It did. That was the weirdest part, is that it seemed like not entirely genuine.
Yeah. Which
maybe genuine is the wrong word. It seemed like not as big of a deal as maybe they were trying to depict.
Yeah. So I think here's my thing with Stunt. He got hooked by a Thresh who was standing in the bush. He had no flash, and he got hooked by the Thresh just standing in the bush. You can't let that happen, Cole. That's not. You have to be safer than that. You cannot give that kill over. It's too easy. If you don't see Thresh standing in your lane, you have to either assume that he's standing in the bush and he will hook you. And if there's not a minion between you and the bush, you better back off, especially if you don't have flash. So things like that. I'm just like, you can't let that happen. Good teams will punish that. They will make you lose the game if you're giving those kind of kills over to them. And that's not why we lost this game, of course. But I just watched that and I was like, oh, bro, come on. Like, you've got to be more solid than that. You got to get that right.
Yeah. Well, so far things are not going wonderfully. And honestly, like I said this to you, it's like I'm not convinced we're as good as our record even is, and now our record's 3-5.
I'd kind of forgotten how true that probably is, Cole. I mean, at the very least, do you think we should probably be 2-6? Because that was quite a lucky Elder Steal.
Yeah, I think in YouTube chat, which YouTube chat doesn't get as much love as Twitch. Our Twitch is like 9 or 10 times more active, but actually that's probably an understatement. In YouTube chat, Slacker Gaming said, "I've been thinking for a while, a 2-0 or an 0-2 could make or break us, and is looking kind of rough, to be honest." And that rings so true for me, that just like I feel like the mental of this team, it would be so dependent on, like we would be so we'd be so affected by momentum, right? If we get the 2 wins and we're filled with that confidence, like things would be great. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of negatives that you can get stuck dwelling on if we 0-2. And so that comment from Slacker Gaming really rings true. Like beyond what a record means, beyond what the standings mean, just from like what does it feel like to be a player on 100 Thieves or a fan of 100 Thieves?
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's a lot of weight there.
Yeah. And it's so these games are close, man. Think about run it back through some of those missed ults we talked about for Meteos. If he hits one of those or two of those, we probably at least get 2 Drakes. You know, he went for a pick on Santorin. Had he landed it, had we got the pick, we probably would have got that Drake. So it is that close. And I think those are the kinds of margins you talk about when you talk about a season, right? So it's agonizing because it's like in that sense how far are we? We're about that far of not hitting a stun on a Sedgel, right?
Yeah.
For this one game that could have gone very differently, but it didn't, and that's what counts.
And maybe this is a good time to bring up this take that we got on Twitter from Kronos. He said, from your guys' perspective, when does the team go from developing and working towards summer to just not good enough to win against the current lineups?
Yeah.
And is there an expectation to fulfill to fans for spring, such as playoffs, or is it trust the Papa even if 6-12 for spring? All right, so let's piece that out.
Yeah.
So when does the team go from developing and working towards summer to just we're not good enough? When is that point for you?
So there are different levels of this answer, right? There's the immediate squad, whether or not they are good enough. There's the coaching staff, whether or not they're good enough. There's the GM, right? So I think it's kind of like layers of immediacy. The first thing, and I think what we're talking about right now, what we talked about for the last hour, is it feels like we're at the point where this team, as it's currently composed, isn't good enough. And there are some things that it feels like we should be able to change because we have the data from a relatively recent split to say something feels like it's not working and maybe we should see if we can fix that. Yeah. Meteos is a player who up till very recently was performing at a very high level. So what's going on there? If after all of your efforts you still can't get him to that point, then I think you have your answer. This team is just not good enough, right? Same with Stunt. So that's the first part. Coaching staff wise, I think it's their job.
Can I stop you before coaching staff?
Yeah.
Like, what is the time on that leash? Like, how much of a leash in terms of time?
I mean, that's one that's so hard for us to answer, right?
Yeah, but we're here to give our opinion on it, man.
So
I think it's
so here,
fair.
okay. If I'm coach, right? Here's what I'd be thinking about. Do I know what's wrong? Like, do I know why Meteos is underperforming to the degree that he is? Do I feel like I know? If I feel like I know, I'm going to tell him exactly what I need to see happen differently. And then I'm going to give him a chance to do that. Right. So for me, there's a couple variables to go in. When did you know that? And when did you tell him that? And if next week, so I would say if you haven't recognized that yet, Cole and I have a jump on you. That's not good. Right. You should know that before we know that. So the ball needs to be rolling on that. You have to have him improving and showing you that he can do some of these things better than he has been doing. If that improvement doesn't start to show up, you got to start thinking about okay, that's fine. What's the alternative? What else is available to us? Is it contracts? Is it I don't know what your other options are. Maybe it's contract. So that's how I think
the buyout market.
It's when did you tell him? Yeah, the buyout market, right? And how long are you comfortable giving him? And my answer to that is probably a couple weeks, right? Like, I don't know that you really want to continue this thing to the point where it's like, I mean, how much data do you really need to say it's not working? I don't know. Do you have a
that's
different?
all. No, I just want to underscore the fact that you are saying that based on the premise that you know what's wrong as Papa Smithy or whoever, like you know what's wrong.
Yeah, and I'd say Zix,
and you're trying to
Zix
fix
and
it.
Jungle Juice.
Zix, Jungle Juice, yeah. So for me, I'm thinking that So there's like two modes, right, that you're in. You're either playing during a split where you're on this really rigorous schedule and you have to try and prepare for specific teams and there's less time to work on general things. And then there's the off season where you have more leeway on that and you can have larger conversations, broader ideas about strategy and work on the team itself more so than preparing for other teams. So to me, I honestly like, and this I guess is less of a specific player answer than more just in general. But I mean, I'm willing to see how this goes into say the middle of summer split, because it's like then you had your split and then you had time to assess, and then what did you do with that? So you did your test, you got your results. What changes did you make, and how did it go from there?
Yeah.
And if we get into the middle of the summer split and things are just as bad as they are now, no signs of improvement, then things need to really be ratcheted up.
Yeah.
So
that
also depends on how poor our performance ends up being the split. If we never win another game, okay, this split, yes, get rid of Meteos or whatever, like make a change. But if we continue on, we are winning like a third of our games or somewhere between a third and half of our games, then it's almost like buying a little time for me. So I hate it because I want to win, and being a 100 Thieves fan from the start meant that you got an early taste of what it's like to be very good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't been there since.
Right.
And that's especially painful because you remember what it was like when we were good, and you had that expectation built into you almost automatically. So it's super painful. But even all that said, I'm willing to grant the long leash into the summer split.
Well, and Kronos asked a really good question. And the first thing he asked is, when does it go from developing to just not good enough? For me, I think you need to make sure that you are still developing, right? As a coaching staff, general manager. If you're telling Meteos, hey, look, this isn't working, let's try this thing. You can only do that so many times before you have to stop the slide somehow, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the mark on is it still developing or is it just not good enough are the things that you're doing and trying actually improving your performance. And I think that's one of the traps we fell into all of last season. It never felt like, until we made some big changes, it never felt like we were getting better. I don't think we can afford to go back to that point where it's like we just got worse and worse and worse until we had
Ryu in there as a Band-Aid.
Yeah, until we blow this thing up. Where's Ryu? Bring it, find him. So I don't think we can afford that.
Bring back Ryu.
Yeah. No. I think we have to do something well before that point. And I think personally, if you wait until midsummer of next split, now, and you're saying basically you need to see things if you're going to give it that long. I think that there's a world where that window is much shorter, right? And I think it's up to the coaches to decide, are we actually getting better? And if we're not getting better, then we're not developing. That's not what this is anymore.
And then one of the counters is that hold on, I just had a second thought while I was thinking that. But one of the counters, right, is that if the losing goes on for a while, and not necessarily just losing, but even just being mediocre, not being seen as a winning team goes on long enough, then we are a less attractive proposition to players every single time.
Totally.
So, and the thought that, I had as I was about to say that is the challenge there is to remind people that this is an entirely new program for 2020. Like, it's not the same GM. It's not the same coach. It's not the same practice facility.
Right.
Everything is different.
Yep.
Everything is different. And the problem is that, like, the perception of the team lasts the entire length of its existence and not just under this current management.
You don't get a hard reset when you change everything.
Right. So it's like, like you have the restaurant that was like terrible, and then someone buys it and it puts the huge under new management sign out. It's like, you have to make that sign as big as you possibly can. It needs to be so big,
right,
that people know that something is different. And I hope that if we do continue to see mediocre or bad results, that we like trumpet that message to combat. Because honestly, like NA is already a tough sell for import prospects, right? And if on top of that we're not even a premier destination for free agents, then the job just gets harder and harder, and you're in a deeper and deeper hole. And I say that as a Jets fan, knowing exactly what that feeling is like.
Yeah. And like, what are the chances we re-sign Ssumday if this is another loss split? You know, at the end of this season, when his contract is up, I'm pretty sure it's up at the end of the season. You know, the guy's only got so much career. Does he really want to spend another year losing like the majority of the games he plays in? How does Ssumday? You know, like that's what you're getting at, and I think that's a really good point. The good pieces you have, they've got to be convinced as well, just like the fans, that this thing is turning around. And if what they're feeling is like, well, worse this week than last week, well, Scrim's worse this week than they've ever been, then I don't know how you convince anybody to either stay or come to play for you.
Yeah. Well, you do it with a huge bag. And then hopefully trading on the way that players are treated and the resources that they have available on the like living side, you know. But you are right. Ssumday's contract is up at the end of this year, according to the contract database. So, you know, that'll be a thing. Another question that we got was from Finbar Smith 99 on Twitter. He says, I've seen quite a few people who think that Stunt should be replaced, or is clearly our weakest player. If we were to drop Stunt, would Breezzyy be a good replacement? Breezzyy being the academy support who has just started for us. Entirely too early for me. Entirely too early. So I know that he has played pretty well, and I like him, and I think he has potential. Cool, but there's been 4 weeks of academy, man. I can't go there yet. I just can't go there. Ideally, you know, you want to have resources available. You want to have backups available in your academy program. So maybe Breezzyy could be that, but man, he's so fresh.
Yeah.
He's coming straight out of collegiate, and it's a different climate, and he'll need to acclimate.
So yeah, and there's an interesting undercurrent to this question, which is, you know, when you listen to Papa Smith, talk about, he said this to us when we talked to him. There's present, soon, future, right? I think that if you're building this kind of full surround of league players, it doesn't do you any good if you can't have a perspective on how good Breezzyy would be as a replacement, how good contracts would be as a replacement, how good Fake God would be as a replacement. If you don't know how good these players would be in the place of your current LCS lineup, what are you doing, right? So that they have to have that perspective. And I think that's why some of what we talked about is so concerning. If having that perspective is viewed as a threat to the security of any of your LCS players, to the point that they might even consider asking for a trade, that's a huge problem. You can't reap the benefits of, look at Blabber. How good is Blabber as a replacement for the MVP? They knew exactly how good he was as a replacement for the MVP, and they have not lost since.
Yeah.
People, that's such a bold move. Trading the MVP is an incredibly bold move. You can only do that if you know exactly how good Blabber is, and you only get to know how good he is if you take a lot of steps along the way to understand it for yourself. So my answer to that question is, I think it is too early. It's only been, 4 weeks, and this kid's still probably figuring out the lay of the land in the academy, right? But I think every week you've got to be looking at him very closely and saying, how good is he as a replacement for Stunt?
Yeah. Well, yes, Blabber did get some time to play, and so he's a known quantity, but again, you don't want to do that too early. And yeah, I just think it's going to be too early for Breezzyy. So maybe in the future we'll get to do that experiment, but I would not recommend it right now. Okay, we need to do some tie up here and finish, because we're just so deep into this that we could go for like another hour, and no one wants to listen to us talk that long. So we'll start wrapping up the pod here. First, Trust the Papa finished up. Trust the Papa campaign completed on Valentine's Day, a day of love and lots of mug orders. So let me switch over to here. I'm pleased to announce that with a little bit of rounding from your dads, rounding up a little bit, we were able today to make a donation of $500 to Mental Health America. So everybody clap, clap, clap,
Wow.
clap for yourselves, applaud yourselves.
Way to go,
On the
everyone.
money we earned for Mental Health America. Again,
Look at that.
100% of the profit margin on all the Trust the Papa stuff. So thank you guys for doing that. And now you get to have these rare items that said you trusted the Papa before 100 Thieves Won Worlds in 2021. Like you
We've moved it out a
believed and you
year.
were there. Yeah. So thank you. And that donation, it does say Dear Cole in there, but it was made on behalf of 100 Talk. So
And President and CEO himself came out and
yeah, he sent me an individual letter that definitely came directly from him and definitely was not auto-generated.
no way. Look at this guy's picture on it, Cole. How could it be auto-generated?
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. Now that's his real signature too. He put his pen on the screen of his computer and signed the email.
That's awesome. What a huge showing
you.
of support from you all.
Thank you everyone for doing that. That's really fun for us to be able to do that. And
Appreciate you.
We appreciate each and every one of you. So that leaves us with just one thing before we leave.
And on a high note, Cole?
You could call it a high note. You could also call it a super, even more depressing than the game tonight note. And that
a
would
Molo
be,
note.
It's time for Sir Radley's lore lesson. We're back in Realms of Runeterra. The official companion. It just says official companion, but not what to. League of Legends Realms of Runeterra official companion.
It's to a companion, whatever you'd like
friend.
it to be.
It's supposed to be my friend. It's supposed to go everywhere with me. Well, I've chosen a brief selection about Noxus. Okay. And the capital here. So we're talking about the capital.
Ooh,
is Noxus a city? Or is it like an area? Well,
Noxus is a region.
All right, so this is the capital of that region then, I suppose. Okay. So let me just read you a thing that I'm so excited to share. Okay.
This is what you all been waiting for.
Constant upheaval. Due to the very real threat of political coups, assassinations, and sundry other intrigues, property and holdings change hands often within the capital. Since this gives the sense of nothing being permanent, it has given rise to a haphazard maze of new structures being built around and on top of the old.
What?
Here's a picture of one. This is the Immortal Bastion. Standing tall at the heart of the capital, it is said that this structure was raised by the dread revenant Mordekaiser, and parts of it have been raised and rebuilt over the centuries. There are many layers to it, with some portions now lying below ground. And the Triferix... what the heck is a Triferix? And the Triferix has forbidden any citizen to wander these districts on pain of death. That is your Sir Radley lore lesson. Courtesy of your crazy donations in the month of January.
Yes.
So now that you know that, when you play Mordekaiser, you're going to think about it. You're going to say, okay, I know exactly when to throw out Magic Grabby Hand because I read about the Immortal Bastion in the official companion.
The official companion, Cole.
And it's going to help you win those trades.
Well,
and you will pop off as Mordekaiser.
If you're going to send somebody to Death Realm, Cole, it's because they tried to go into your Mordekaiser mansion.
Your bastion. They went into your bastion.
Mordekaiser bastion.
Why is this a thing? Why do you guys like this? Let's just do some esports and get on with our lives. Okay. This has been 100 Talk. This has been a rough week.
That is true.
But we'll dig deep for some optimism. Dig super deep for some optimism. Mm-hmm. And look, 100% real. Let's just see what we can learn about the team. All right. It's not going well. Playoffs aren't out of reach. Let's just see what we can learn about the team. Let's have trust in the Papa, all those things that we like to say. And then just take it as it comes. But I'm telling you, if we have another couple weeks like this week, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be sad. It's gonna be hard for us as a podcast.
Let's start doing more candlelight vigils and stuff.
Yeah. So pull out your Ouija boards after this. Meet us in the Discord voice channel. All right, everybody. We love you. We miss you already.
Take care.
We'll see you next.